and welcome back to my little moist cleft of the internet for car videos. Now, over the past 12 months I've reviewed several Genesis cars, and this new to Europe brand has so far produced, reasonably good cars, but to make an impact in the car market, Genesis needs to be better than just a little bit good. So this is the new bespoke for Europe G70 Shooting Brake. So I want to find out if this tickles my pickle with such ferocity and persistence that I rush out and buy one. No, because I've just bought a motorbike, I don't have any money, nursery fees are crippling, and Genesis doesn't actually have dealers that you can really visit. So anyway, let's pretend and find out if this is any good, or if you just buy a BMW 3 Series estate instead. Let's go. Yes, here is the G70 Shooting Brake, and just before I really get going, a few ground rules. It's a bit windy, we're about to have the biggest storm in years, and there might be some wind noise on my mic, so apologies for that. Also, Genesis is, as hopefully you know now, the luxury arm of Kia and Hyundai, so it's based on a Kia Stinger underneath this, which means it's rear-wheel drive, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. It is a shooting brake, and I know shooting brake these days just means an estate with a swoopy coupe-ish roofline. It's not a proper shooting brake, but all you angry keyboard warriors can let me know in the comments about why that is the worst thing since the fire of London. Anyway, these cost from £35,000 for a regular one, a petrol one that is. The diesel is £37,600, and this is a top spec sport line, so it costs about £42,000, and you can tell it's a sport line because it's got a blacked out grille. The lesser trim levels have a shiny chrome one, which I actually kind of prefer. I'm not all about the murdered out look. And you get different wheels on the sport line as well. You get 19s, whereas you get 18s on the lower two trim levels. This one's actually £46,000 because it's got £750 of paint. I do love it when manufacturers charge you for paint. I just want a car with no paint, please, and save some money. Dacia will probably do that. It's got a £3,000 innovation pack, which adds a head-up display and a digital driver's display, and it's got a £2,000 comfort pack, which adds squeezy inflatable seat bolsters, so when you put it in sport mode it hugs you a bit. I don't think that's worth £2,000. Oh, it adds memory seats and some other stuff if I'm not being flippant. I know I said it's based on the Kia Stinger platform. Sadly, we don't get that really nice 3.3 litre petrol V6 that we do get in the Stinger. Instead, we get a 245 horsepower four-cylinder petrol engine, or this, the 2.2 litre 200 horsepower diesel, which is one of the rattliest, noisiest modern diesels I've used, to be fair. We'll talk about that in the driving bit. In terms of size, it's the exact same size pretty much as a 3 Series Touring or a Merc C-Class estate, but it's not as roomy as either of those inside, and again I'll show you in a bit. Oh, one weird curiosity, I don't know if you can see that. It's got Brembo brakes. I know Brembo supplies lots of brakes for lots of manufacturers, but here Genesis have actually stuck the Brembo logos on them, which is all very fancy. I love the shape of it. I just think it's a lot more interesting than a 3 Series estate or a C-Class estate in the looks department. However, let's open the boot, and we start to realise that this, although it looks great, the boot really isn't all that massive. Yeah, the boot's only 403 litres, which isn't much bigger than a Volkswagen Golf's boot. It's 465 litres if you're cheeky and fill it right up to the roof, but I'm not about that kind of thing. If we look under the boot floor, you can see there's not a huge amount of space under there either. There's a few little compartments for little bits and pieces, and there's a cargo net there. And you can flip down the rear seats using these levers at the back, and there's a 12-volt socket there as well. And if you do flip the rear seats down, I can't remember the exact literage, but it is pretty big once you've done that. But yeah, and obviously it beeps because it's a Korean car. The other disappointment for me, and I know I just sound like I'm slagging this off, but look at that. That seat is in my driving position. I haven't even tried to put my child seats in here, to be honest. They were fit, but it's going to be a bit cramped. I'm going to jump in and show you how I fit. And yeah, it's a bit tight in there. Hang on. Yeah, in terms of space in there, if I turn the ignition on, this seat will go forward a bit. It just does that thing where it moves back and forward to make it easier to get in and out. But I'm still going to be a bit cramped for legroom, and my feet barely fit under the seat as well. haven't really got any headroom either. My head touches the ceiling, it brushes it like a butterfly to a little fox's earlobe. It's just a little bit weird and a little bit claustrophobic almost. And the centre tunnel, that is proper old school rear wheel drive problems. That is huge. Your middle seat passengers' knackers will probably just drag on that. So yeah, it's not great. I've got heated seats, controls in the door, and actually the view out could be worse. It could be worse, but yeah, this isn't really a car that you buy if you carry backseat passengers very often, to be honest. A 3 Series or a C-Class estate feels way roomier in the back. Wayne Roonier? I don't know. Anyway, I don't really do football. Let's look up front and I'll show you some of the better bits of this car. Like the rest of the Genesis range, you kind of get this Korean Bentley vibe. There's lots of nice stitching on the seat, everything feels reasonably posh, and you've got these sort of milled circular aluminium bits in the Sportline version, which looks like your fascia on a really old pre-war Bentley or something. It's quite cool. The digital driver's display is worth talking about a little bit, because you probably won't be able to see this, but the dial's almost holographic, they're kind of 3D, and it actually works really well and looks really posh, and it adds a sense of depth to the screen. This is the standard Kia Hyundai infotainment system. It's about 10.25 inches, about exactly. Doesn't have wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. You have to plug in for those, which is a bit annoying. Wireless charging mat. Lots of physical buttons for the heating and everything, which makes me, as we know, very excited. There's a button for the cooled seats as well, heated steering wheel, etc, etc. Yeah, I think it actually looks pretty decent in here. There are some hard bits on top of the doors. It doesn't feel as posh inside as the G80 or GV80, but obviously they're more expensive cars. I think for the money, this feels pretty decent, unless you've driven a Hyundai or Kia, and then you'll recognise lots of the steering wheel buttons and things like that. But yeah, I think the interior up front is one of the best things about this car. I quite like it. There is a little bit too much silver with purple backlighting down here, which is hard to see in bright daylight, but yeah, I should say the infotainment screen is pretty sharp as well. I glossed over that too quickly. It's very good. I just wish it had all the wireless smartphone mirroring things. Right, that's probably enough about the inside of the Genesis G70 Shooting Brake. Let's go for a drive and see if it can match up to that BMW 3 Series that I talked about so often in this video already. Let's go. Right, let's go for a drive in what should be the sportiest Genesis yet. Foot on the brake, hit the start button, and I feel like I'm in a transit van. That 2.2 litre diesel. It sounds rough as old balls, frankly. It is not a great start when you get into this. Let me turn my fans down. Yeah, it's just a little bit noisy. It's very noisy, in fact. It kind of goes away once you're up to speed, but doesn't feel premium at all, that 2.2 litre engine. I've driven the petrol engine in this in other cars, and it's fine, it's better, so I'd probably go petrol and accept the fact I'm going to get worse MPG. Right, as you drive off though, you do realise that this feels pretty sporty. The driving position goes reasonably low, though I think there are subwoofers under the seat, so it doesn't go, you know, as low as in a BMW, but it's pretty close. And it's rear-wheel drive, and even if you're not doing big dank skids, it does just feel like you're being pushed from the back, which feels nice, and it feels, again, a little bit posh. Now, boring things, visibility out is good, the mirrors are decent, the rear window is, I don't know, it feels the rear view mirror, and the C-pillars are quite thick at the back, so pulling out of junctions at a tight angle can be tricky, but that's very boring stuff to talk about. What's more interesting is how this feels on a twisty road, which is, oh, thank you, lady. Actually, I can't see her because she's there, behind my C-pillars. Right, sorry, that was all a bit muddled. We're going to get some dual carriageway. I'll tell you how it feels at 70 miles an hour in terms of noise and stuff, but then we're going to take this to a twisty road, and this has some proper sporty stuff on it. It's got a limited slip-diff on the back axle. It's got really decent Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres, and obviously it's got those Brembo brakes. So I think Genesis is telling us this car should drive well when we're in a sporty mood. And I've got adaptive dampers on this one. I think luxury and Sportline cars get adaptive dampers. So as I go between comfort and sport modes, I should be able to tell a difference, but I really can't. Not in terms of the ride. When you go to sport mode, it does hug you, as I say, in the seat. But the adaptive dampers, I wouldn't worry too much about having those. But anyway, dual carriageway, let's go, and then we'll do some hooning. I've got mud on my windscreen where I just did skids. Yeah, great. Right, I'm about to accelerate from a 50 limit up to a 70 limit as flamboyantly as is possible in a diesel premium estatey thing. Let's go around this corner at 45 miles an hour and around here and boot it. The gearbox eventually kicks down and you get some gruff diesel noises, and that's 70 miles an hour. I'm going to put it back into comfort mode just so the gearbox shuffles its way into 8th. It's an 8-speed. It's reasonably refined in here. It's got 225 section tyres front and back, so they're reasonably wide, but they're not roaring in here. There's not much wind noise. It's pretty decent, to be honest. I think a 3 Series might be a little bit quieter, but this is respectable. And now I'm in comfort mode. Again, I can't really tell any difference from the dampers, but I could do long distances up front at least in complete comfort. Now, I've been getting about 38 mpg out of this. The full average of 1,000 miles of journalists driving this is about 34 mpg, and considering it's going to have been flogged half to death by those journalists, that isn't bad really, is it? I imagine on a long run you would probably get kind of 45, something like that, and probably about 500 miles from a tanker diesel. But yeah, practically speaking, as a mile muncher, this is pretty good if you're in the front. Obviously, we've spoken about the lack of rear legroom, so your rear seat passengers might not be as keen on a round trip to Tuscany from Bognor Regis. Anyway, let's get some twisty roads and I'll whack it back in sport mode and see how it goes down a twisty road, and the answer, hint, surprisingly well. Right, I'm coming up to my twisty road of joy. I'm going to twist the nipple of sportiness into full Linford Christie mode. I'm not going to be able to stop and do launch control, but it's 7.7 seconds to 60. Let's go from 30 to 60. 50. There we go. It's brisk, this diesel engine. It's got plenty of mid-range punch, and actually it's perfectly quick enough. Now, the handling of this feels kind of old school BMW, and I mean that in a really nice way. When you get into a corner, it just kind of balances and feels like a really natural, almost sports car sort of thing. It's got a really nice vibe to it. I'm not getting anything in terms of feedback through the steering, but what modern car does, that's why I don't normally mention that. But when you boot it, you just feel like being pushed from the back axle, and it's quite satisfying. When you brake into a corner and get on the gas on the way out, you feel the car kind of just wanting to move about a little bit. It doesn't unless you put it in Sport Plus mode, which turns the stability control off a little bit, and as I've said, you can do skids and car parks with it. Yeah, it just feels, I don't know, it feels like it handles better than a diesel estate car really should do, and I kind of wish Genesis had put that much effort into the packaging of this, to be honest. I guess we'll get a new one of these at some point on a new platform, which will have more rear seat room and all that stuff. The brakes, they're really good, as you'd expect from Brembo branded items. They're really decent. I've not had any problems, and I mean, you're going to be driving this like a normal person. You're not going to set the brakes on fire, and obviously it's not a track car. So yeah, in terms of the way it handles and the way it makes you feel behind the wheel, it's really impressive. Really impressive. It's the best driving Genesis, definitely, and I would pretty much put it up there with a 3 Series. Steering might not be quite as good, and BMWs aren't great at the moment, but this is still very woolly and fluffy. But yeah, it does drive kind of how it looks, which I always think is a good thing in a car. It looks sporty and it drives pretty sporty. Other things you should know about the way this drives: it has loads of grip, and obviously it's on really good tyres, which are great in the dry, and in my experience really good in the wet as well. Yeah, the traction control and stability control does kick in reasonably early, but you know, you have to be driving like a knob to really notice it, and then you, as I said, you can put it in Sport Plus mode to sidestep all of that kind of guff anyway. Yeah, I'm just really impressed with how this drives on a twisty road, at least. Now, that's probably enough waffle about this, so back to you, Tim, for an outro. So in conclusion, what do I think of the Genesis G70 Shooting Brake? I thought it was going to be a left field alternative to that BMW 3 Series, but it just falls down in too many areas for me. It's too cramped in the back, the boot's too small, the engines are just too coarse and too rattly. I kind of struggle to recommend it, apart from the fact it looks great, and if you only use the front seats, it's really comfortable, and the interior is pretty lovely as well. But but I kind of feel they need to have another go at this to really make it BMW or Mercedes rival. Yeah, slightly disappointed, Genesis, sorry. Anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you for watching. If it's been really unhelpful and you've hated every second, then hit like, especially if you work in Genesis marketing or PR, in which case you probably really hate this. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and in the comments, call me a discarded cigarette packet, because people abuse the countryside and it makes me really angry. Anyway, goodbye.